Welcome to episode 24 of the Blasting Basketballs podcast. It's the Kobe Bryant episode, RIP Kobe. This is my first solo episode since my first ever episode, which is almost 2 years ago, which is crazy to think. So it's definitely going to be different. It's going to feel a little weird, but I usually have somebody else to bounce my thoughts off. But, I'll give this a try. I'll give it a shot. So I'm planning on running through the 2022 NBA playoff bracket and maybe intertwining some regular season talk in there as well, like DPOY, MVP, some big themes from the regular season. But overall, just going to have some chill talk about the playoffs and let's just get into it. So it feels like the future of the NBA is finally here. LeBron James didn't make the playoffs. He didn't even make the play-in, which is crazy to think, him making the finals like 10 years in a row. It definitely feels like without LeBron in the playoffs, a new era has been ushered in the NBA. And I don't feel great saying that because LeBron is my greatest of all time. He's my GOAT. So seeing him kind of decline slowly and the window of the Lakers closing, it's not a great feeling. But Father Time catches up to everybody, And on the other hand, you have KD, who barely made the playoffs. He had to go to the play-in. So, KD and LeBron have been the faces of the league for the past 10, 15 years. LeBron even longer than that. So, it is refreshing seeing a new crop of players and these young, exciting players like John Morant, Donovan Mitchell, Anthony Edwards, Trae Young, Luka Doncic, the list goes on. They're all super exciting, but it takes some time to adjust to after watching these generational players dominate the league for so many years. But it definitely is exciting. And we actually saw a glimpse of the new era last year in the finals when the Suns and the Bucks faced off. I noticed that a lot of people were a little disappointed with the finals, at least for the first few games, as they were used to seeing Curry and LeBron go at it for so many years. And then you adjust to watching Devin Booker and Giannis, who are great players, but people just weren't used to watching them. And they were like, who are these guys? Like, who is Mikal Bridges? Who is Chris Middleton? To the casual fan, like, they have no idea who they are, but Steph Curry, everybody knows who he is. Even if you don't watch basketball, like, who Steph Curry is. So take some time to get used to, but it is exciting. The new era is finally here. So just to jump into this playoff bracket for the 2022 NBA playoffs, let's see, which series should I start with? I think I'll start with the Warriors and the Nuggets. So Jokic has had a great season. The MVP race has come down to three guys. It's come down to the most dominant player in the league, Giannis, the second most dominant player in the league, Joel Embiid, and the craftiest player in the league, Nikola Jokic. Now, when you look at the stats, Nikola Jokic has had a crazy season. His PER is like the highest of all time. And he was like the first player ever to reach some amount of points, rebounds, and assists. I don't know. I don't really care too much about stats, but I know that when you look at the stats, Jokic is definitely a runaway MVP candidate. But you have to consider the dominance of Embiid and the consistency of Giannis. But just going back to, talking about the Nuggets, it feels like the Nuggets don't have enough firepower to keep up with the Warriors. When you look at Jordan Poole, who's emerged as one of the best six men in the league, the return of Klay Thompson, which has been a welcome sight to see. I love seeing the Warriors back in form with Steph, Klay, and Dre. Now you add Wiggins into the fold, and you have the Warriors able to throw Kevon Looney and guys like Bjelica at Jokic. They're not going to be able to guard him, but they can at least, make it a little tough for him, be physical with him, draw some fouls. So yeah, Jokic is going to get his, but in terms of the surrounding casts around Jokic, you got guys like JaMychal Green, Will Barton, Austin Rivers, who are solid players, but for matching up with the Warriors, I just don't see it. I think it'll be a short series. And unfortunately, Jokic's, amazing season will come to a halt in the first round, in my opinion. So moving on to the East, let's go to the East. Okay, Milwaukee and Chicago. Similar case where I feel bad for Chicago. They were matched up with, the reigning champs. And I mean, somebody had to play them, you know. And what sucks most for Chicago is they were actually the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference for a bulk of the season. And then after the All-Star break, their season just kind of went downhill. Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, Patrick Williams, they all faced injuries. Zach LaVine also was injured at times. And they've also struggled with their rebounding and their size. Nikola Vucevic is a great player in terms of offense, but we've kind of noticed that his rebounding game and his ability to defend the rim isn't what is desirable from a guy like him, who's known as a borderline all-star player. So that lack of interior presence will definitely hurt them in the playoffs. And I anticipate that to be a short series as well. The 3-headed monster of Giannis, Middleton, and Drew Holiday just will be too much for them. And then you add in the return of Brook Lopez, who's their anchor in the middle. I feel bad for the Bulls because it's their return to the playoffs and they've played great this season. And DeMar DeRozan was in MVP talks earlier in the season, which was great to see. I mean, it feels like people forgot about DeRozan prior to this season. He was on the Spurs and it feels like nobody watches the Spurs. So for him to come to a big market in Chicago and have some amazing games, he showed that he's one of the most relentless players, especially in the mid-range. And he actually developed a bit of a 3-point game in Chicago as well. Him and LaVine were a great duo. Like, people always praise DeRozan, but LaVine had a great season as well. Averaged mid-20s. So, sucks to see their season come to an end, but I got to take the reigning champs in this one. Like I mentioned before, Giannis is the most dominant player in the league, and he's going to feast on them in the paint. Let's see. Let's move on to Memphis and Minnesota. So Minnesota beat my favorite team, the Clippers, in the play-in, which was painful to watch, but I actually enjoy watching the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards shows that he shows up when the lights are the brightest, and it was honestly a pleasure to watch him, even though he killed my Clippers in the play-in. Like, there was one play where he just blew by Norman Powell and dunked the crap out of the ball, and I knew it was over right there and then. It was kind of sad to see, but I also enjoy watching this new crop of players. Like I mentioned before, like Anthony Edwards, who knows, dude? The sky's the limit for him. Like, Pat Beverly, his own teammate, said, Anthony Edwards could be the next MJ. Like, he's impressive. He really is. His speed, his ability to get to his spots, and he knocks down shots when it matters most. And when you talk about the Timberwolves, you have to mention the impact of Pat Beverly. Pat Beverly, wherever he goes, I don't think he's missed the playoffs. Like, his energy, it just goes to show, like, even if you're not the most talented, like, your energy can be infectious to the people around you, and your enthusiasm can determine the outcome of whatever you're in. It doesn't have to be basketball. If you're working at some job and you're really enthusiastic, even if you're not the most skilled, you might be successful. You likely will be successful. It's all about your outlook on things. So I'm really impressed with Beverly's impact on his team, getting them to the playoffs. And this could be an upset in the first round. I mean, they match up really well with the Grizzlies. They have long wing defenders that can potentially keep Morant out of the paint and limit his playmaking ability. Now Morant, amazing season, one of the upcoming stars, cemented himself as top point guard in the league. And alongside him is Desmond Bane, who prior to this season, we thought Dylan Brooks was John Morant's backcourt mate. But Desmond Bane has shown to be one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Plus, he's so sturdy. Like he's so strong that like, it's hard to move him. Like he's solid all around. Then you got Jaren Jackson Jr. He's proven to be one of the best rim protectors in the league. Plus, he can shoot it. He's feisty. I like that Grizzlies team, but they drew a tough matchup in the Timberwolves. So definitely an entertaining series. Both teams' average age is under 25, which, makes them from explosive basketball, fast-paced basketball. And yeah, I mean, I expect the Grizzlies to win just due to their excellence in the regular season. But the Timberwolves, man, I mean, they got something going there. Even if they don't win this year, they're going to be a fixture in the playoffs for the years to come. Beverly's impact should be a lasting impact for several years. Let's see, moving to the East, Philadelphia and Toronto. So the trade for James Harden might be what we remember this playoff or this regular season as the season where James Harden went to Philly. And the reason why I say that is because when you pair two MVP caliber players together, the likelihood is if you remain healthy, you're going deep in the playoffs. So it's almost a guarantee that in these next few years, if they don't do it this year, they're going to the conference finals and likely the finals. Now, I say that because I've noticed in the past and in this year, the game really slows down in the playoffs. Things get a lot more physical. Role players kind of default to their stars because, role players, and at the end of the day, they can't just go get a bucket themselves. They rely on the guys that are paid that max contract to go and bail their team out when things are going rough. And you have two guys in James Harden and Joel Embiid that can do that for you. Not many teams can say they have two MVP caliber players. I don't think there's any team right now that can say that. So I actually was surprised that the Sixers got James Harden. It worked out because Harden's value was declining at the perfect time, and they were able to nab Harden in that Simmons trade. I actually thought Harden's value was too high for Ben Simmons, but it seemed like over time, like Simmons' value kind of shot up a little bit or came back to the normal. Because after that series against Atlanta last year, like Simmons' stock was so low, like nobody was buying. But I definitely expect Philly to win this series just due to their sheer star power and also the lack of interior presence for Toronto. Now, the Raptors are going to try to get it done by committee. They have a lot of versatile players, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, Gary Trent, and shout out to Fred VanVleet for having his first All-Star appearance. But it's hard to see the Raptors winning this series. They just don't have the star power to match up with Harden and Embiid. That two-man game is going to be tough. And Tyrese Maxey, he's a stud as well. Tobias Harris hasn't been great, but he can still show up, So in general, I expect Philly to win that series. And then moving on to the West. So let's see. What do we got left? Dallas and Utah. So it seems like Luka Doncic has trouble with injuries pretty often, which sucks to hear. He's going to miss the first couple of games of that series. If he was healthy, nobody wants to see Luka in a playoff series, as we've seen in the past with the Clippers and, Paul George and Kawhi trying to guard Luka, but ultimately failing for the most part. Nobody wants to see Luka orchestrate that offense, but when you take out Luka and you only have, Jalen Brunson to run the offense, who's a really good player, but against, Utah, I don't see it, Now, Dallas did do a good job of going out and getting Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans in exchange for Kristaps Porzingis. But, it doesn't seem like a good enough insurance policy when you're trying to cover for Luka. And it seemed like there was some friction between Porzingis and Luka. So that's probably why they made that trade, and actually it turned out pretty well. Spencer Dinwiddie hit some big shots for them during the regular season and helped them secure that 4-5 matchup. Now, when you look at the Jazz, there's been some frustration in that locker room. It seems like Donovan Mitchell has publicly expressed his frustration against, their team blowing leads and not being able to hold on to big leads. And it seems like Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell have never fully healed their relationship since that COVID incident a couple years ago. Uh, Pair that with Joe Ingles being out for the season. And yes, the Jazz may win this round, but I don't see them going deep. And I foresee the team having some drastic changes going forward. It just seems like that pairing, while it is a good pairing, it just seems like Gobert's game doesn't translate well when you're trying to guard teams in the playoffs that are going to go small ball, 5-out, as we saw last year. We know with Terrence Mann dropping 40 on him and taking him out of the playoffs. I think there's going to be a similar scenario this year. So yes, I take Jazz in the first round, but I don't think they're going past the Phoenix Suns, who I'll talk about next. So when you look at that Pelicans-Suns series, the Pelicans were able to beat the Clippers in the play-in, which again hurt me. It hurt me watching that game just because, when the Clippers have a 10-point lead in the fourth and they blow it, I mean, it's never great to watch your team blow a lead. And I followed that team all season long, so it just hurts to see your team not even make the playoffs, and just they were always faced with these tough circumstances, like PG catching COVID for their last playing game, Luke Kennard being out, Kawhi being out the whole season, and they really fought throughout the whole season and actually went above 500 in the regular season. It just seemed like it wasn't going to work in the playoffs. Like, even if they did go to the playoffs, they were probably going to get wrecked by the Suns. So, but yeah, I mean, hats off to the Pelicans. CJ McCollum provides a calming presence to their team, similar to how CP3 provides a calming presence to the Suns. I really appreciate Brandon Ingram's game. He can get his shot up over anyone, and he can get to his spots. So definitely, I like the Pelicans, and I like Jose Alvarado's creativeness in getting steals, like hiding behind the stanchion or whatever, and just being he literally just blends in with the crowd and just runs up behind somebody and takes the ball from them. It's funny, but I like what the Pelicans got going on, and if they had Zion, maybe they could take a couple games, but I just don't see the Pelicans taking more than one game from the Suns. The most well-rounded team this year, they had their most winningest season of all time, I believe, this past season. And Devin Booker, MVP candidate, you can say, even though he's not considered to be one by most people, I mean, he led the most winningest team in scoring. And Chris Paul was out for a good amount of the season as well. So for them to secure a number one seed and at 63 wins, I mean, it's really impressive. Got Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton, Campaign, Cam Johnson. They're all really solid, really versatile. Got a good mix of young guys and experienced vets. And the addition of CP3 just transformed that team into something completely different, a transcendent team, probably the most well-rounded team that we've seen since the Warriors with KD. So, I mean, the Suns, they're probably going to the finals again. I mean, unless the Warriors can dethrone them, I think they're the one team in the West that really have a chance against the Suns, the Warriors. It's just tough to see the Suns. I think it's their time. They're probably in the finals for the next couple of years. So let's see. Let's move on to the East. Okay, it's getting a little chilly in my room right now, actually. As you can tell, Trae Young completely took over in the play-in. He had Karis LeVert sliding all over the place. And this was without Clint Capella, without John Collins. He completely took that game over. Cleveland looked like they were going to win the game, but Trae Young just absolutely took the game by its horns. So you try to play up on Trae Young, right? You're trying to pressure him, right? He's just blowing right by you. You play off Trae Young, right? You're like, all right, shoot it then. Yeah, he's going to shoot it from the logo. What are you going to do? He's too quick and he can shoot too well. He's definitely when you look at that Luka for Trae Young trade, it's honestly a pretty even trade. And that's crazy to say because he's going to be one of the GOATs, it seems like. But then Trae Young's right there with him in terms of talent and impact. Gotta give it to Trae, man. Even without Clint Capella and John Collins, Trae Young is scary. He can lead that Hawks team to an upset against the Heat. I'm telling you right now. Even if the Heat send double teams and triple teams, Trae Young will make the right play to guys like Kevin Herter, Bojan Bogdanovic, or Bogdan Bogdanovic, and Danilo Gallinari. I guess the one issue is, again, they're missing their front court guys, but we'll see about that one. The Heat are right behind the Suns in terms of well-roundedness. That pickup of Kyle Lowry was amazing. Jimmy Butler, one of the top wings in the league. Bam Adebayo, arguably DPOY, even though it seems like Marcus Smart's going to get it this year. Tyler Hero, probably sixth man of the year. They got a bunch of guys that can kill you and really guard up. Max Strus was a slept on guy, a shooter. So overall, I think everybody's going to pick the Heat in that series, but the Hawks can definitely upset them with a Trae Young series to remember. So it's going to be interesting. I definitely enjoy watching Trae Young. He's one of the most enjoyable players to watch, in my opinion. Let's see, what series are left? I think it's just the Celtics and Nets. So I probably left this one last for a reason. This is going to be a coming of age series for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I used to be a huge Celtics fan, right? And the past few years, something just fell off about them. It might have been the trade that Danny Ainge made to ship Isaiah Thomas away for Kyrie Irving. Something about that just didn't sit right with me. Or even just this season with Dennis Schroeder, like being a ball stopper and taking away shots from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and taking playing time away from my young guys like Peyton Pritchard and Marcus Smart. Something just didn't feel right with the Celtics. But then they get rid of Schroeder. They bring in Daniel Tice, who, all Celtics fans love Daniel Tice, like solid rim protector. He can do the little things. He can also hit a shot from time to time. It seems like the Celtics are figuring it out. They're peaking at the right time. And it just seems poised for the Celtics to finally, especially their young duo, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, to take the torch from KD and Kyrie this series. Last year, they played him in the first round and they got destroyed. But this year, it seems to be a different story. And of course, it's going to come down to their star power. It's going to come down to the battle of the duos, KD and Kyrie versus Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But the Celtics are peaking at the right time. They seem to have the more well-rounded roster. Yes, Rob Williams went down, but they have an insurance policy in Al Horford and Daniel Tice. Hey, man, I'm telling you, the Celtics' time may be now. Like, it's going to be tough getting past the Bucks and the Heat, but you never know, man. Like, the Celtics could really take it all the way this year. And it's been a while since I've actually backed the Celtics this much, but the vibes are immaculate right now. So, you know what? I like the Celtics in this series, even though it's tough to say when you're playing against Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, like an absolute wizard with the ball. But once you go past KD and Kyrie, things get really thin. And I think that'll be the deciding factor in this series. So just to wrap up, give some award talk. Speaking of the Celtics, so it looks like Marcus Smart is probably going to win DPOY, Defensive Player of the Year. And I've been pretty impressed with his defense, and he's been a great defender since he was drafted in 10 years ago. So I'm glad to see him get that national praise, because we've always known, like, us Bostonians have always known Marcus Smart as a great defender. So for him to finally get that recognition nationally is amazing. But in terms of being able to guard 1 through 5, I'm not sure I see it with Marcus Smart. I think it's more so a guy like Bam Adebayo who can do that. But of course, I'm going to support Marcus Smart. I mean, ever since he returned from his injury, he's been absolutely amazing, and he spearheaded this run that the Celtics have been on. So I'm really happy for him. And he does deserve at least one Defensive Player of the Year in his career. I mean, that's what he's known for. Like, he might not be the best player, but he's going to give you that energy, especially on defense. Then MVP, it has to be Joel Embiid, right? I mean, he played without Ben Simmons for most of the season. And then even when James Harden comes on board, Harden seems to be declining a bit, at least in the scoring section. So Joel Embiid has had to carry the load pretty much every night. He averages about 30 points, which means he's going to give you like 35 to 40 on any given night. And just the way he's carried that load for the Sixers, and he's been really dominant. I can't think of anybody that can guard him in the post, especially. And he has a really good perimeter game for a 7-2 guy. I got to go Joel Embiid for the MVP. And, there's other awards, but MVP and Defensive Player of the Year are the ones that I really care about. Like, sure, you can say like, oh, Sixth Man of the Year, Tyler Hero, which, yeah, sure, like, take it. I mean, I don't really care. Most improved player might be like Anthony Simons. Again, I don't really care about those awards, but you can give it to a guy like him. But yeah, like these playoffs are going to be exciting. Like I said before, a new era, a breath of fresh air. And if I'm going to make my prediction for the finals, I got to say Milwaukee, Phoenix again. I got to say that. And then Milwaukee's going to repeat. I get it's not the sexiest answer, but it's going to be Giannis's league for the next few years at least. Most dominant player I've seen in a long time. So that's it for episode 24 of the Blasting Basketballs podcast. Thank you for joining me. It was my first solo episode in like 2 years. So hope you liked it. And I'll see you next time. Peace.